There are 4,218 PS2 games, and I'm beating every one of them. I've got to own the game because I'm playing everything on the original hardware, but I've beefed it up with a RetroTink 5X, some component cables, and more to come soon. Can I do this before I die of old age? I hope so. Onimusha Warlords was developed by Capcom and released in the US March of 2001. Set in feudal Japan, Onimusha was meant to be a ninja version of Capcom's other series, Resident Evil. The game was a success, especially in Japan, and has a Metacritic score of 86 out of 100. With tank controls and fixed camera angles, can I beat this sword and magic Resident Evil? Onimusha was actually a very fun game, taking after Resident Evil, except instead of guns and police officers, we have ninjas and swords and a little bit of magic. And it's surprisingly a very fun game for how short it is and how much it is like Resident Evil. It still feels a bit like its own game, so let's go ahead and go over the journey. The journey through this game is going to be just a little different, only because this game has large swaths of time where you're just finding items to go ahead, like in Resident Evil. You find an item, you find the place to put it, you go forward. You find an item, you find the place to put it, and you go forward. So instead, because the story also doesn't have tons of twists and turns, I'm going to talk about the story here and how the game functions. Again, it is also a short game, being completed in about 6.5 hours, so I just feel like it would be kind of silly to go through each, hey, I got this item and then I went through this door, and then the next thing I did was get this item and I went through this door. So let's just talk about it in a more broad term, because the game is really good and I want to talk about some of the aspects of it. And we'll start with the story, which is, to me, a little bit more simple, which is fine. A simple story isn't a bad one. But the whole story is, your main character, Samanosuke, is in a war with Nobunaga. Now, we're on the same side, and Nobunaga was fighting, and in the end he was victorious in his war. However, he was fatally injured, and then suddenly disappeared. No one ever found his body, so everyone assumed he was dead. However, it's clear later that demons have taken over him and are trying to use him to do a bunch of demon stuff, and it's not good. This is not like a good thing. So we get a letter later on from our cousin who says, hey, there's a bunch of people at my castle who are disappearing and something is happening here. And so that's the whole point of the game, is we go to this castle to see what is going on with our cousin, who is a princess, and what is happening to all the people who live at the castle, and why she is so frightened. Samanosuke is the main character, but we are also accompanied by Cade, our ninja friend, and we do get to control her a few times, although it's not very much, and we don't do very much with her. She still is part of the story throughout the rest of the game. But Samanosuke here walks around and we get a taste of the controls, which again are tank controls. Now, the difference here is that you have a lot more movement options than in a Resident Evil game, which is kind of cool. You can do these little dashes back and forth and left and right. You can also, when you draw your sword, do these little dashes left and right and forward and backward, which gives you a little bit better positioning on the battlefield. And it's something that I wish I had a little bit more time to get under my control, because it was really cool. It was really neat to see how it worked. And fighting is pretty simple. You have an attack button, you have a guard button, and you can move around. You also have your 180-degree button, which, just like in Resident Evil, switches you from going forward to backward so that the tank controls are a little easier to use. Now, we do also have fixed camera angles and a bunch of stuff to click on, so be prepared for that as well. Here I fight my first demons, and you can see how much quicker you can move around the battlefield. Obviously, you don't have a gun, so you can't attack from far away often. You do get some ranged weapons as the game goes on, but the main form of combat is through your melee weapon. Oh, this guy is ugly, Jesus. So this guy comes up to take away my cousin here, and she is actually being sought after by the demons, which is one of the big reasons that we're here, was to figure out what's happening to everyone. Well, we found out there's a bunch of demons and they take her, which sucks, but we couldn't fight them. We just couldn't do anything to them, and we kind of look pathetic. Don't worry though, the clan of ogres, the Oni, which is a Japanese legend, the Oni, are going to help us because they do not like the demons. So they give us their power in the form of this gauntlet, which will help us take their souls and use their souls as magic power. So now the rest of the game, we have 4 different swords. We have the normal sword, which does practically nothing, and we have 3 elemental swords. Now that we have this gauntlet on, we can absorb different types of souls: red, blue, and yellow. Red gives you your currency, which red orbs are like everyone's favorite. Blue recovers your magic power to use your magic abilities from each of your 3 swords, and yellow recovers your health. You press triangle to do a special magic attack, and you have a magic meter at the top. You've got to watch it because obviously as powerful and helpful as it is, it will go down and you've got to recover it before you use it again. And it's very helpful because it will most likely kill every enemy in the game outright. Now, of course, they don't kill every enemy, so you got to be a little bit careful. And while you're gaining this stuff, the red orbs are used to upgrade those 3 magic swords. Leveling up those swords is not just to increase their power or to increase your speed or to increase anything else. It also can help you unlock doors, as there are doors around each area that have these special colored monsterish things on them. And the only way to unlock them is to level up your sword to certain levels and a specific element of each sword. And when you do, you can unlock that door. Now, not all of those doors are necessary, but it's pretty much necessary to level them up because there's at least one door at level 1, 2, and 3 for each of the elemental swords that you'll have to unlock. So there's really no reason not to. It's already a short enough game, so leveling up and getting those swords up to level 3 for each one is extremely helpful. While we're traveling around in the game, we'll find some items like notebooks that have translations for Japanese symbols, or at least symbols, and those translations will be followed by a couple words, and we use those to unlock special chests that we have to figure out the little puzzle. Now, as you find the notebooks, you'll find enough of the symbols and words to piece it together so you know what's going on, and the treasure chest will ask you, "What is this?" and it will give you a series of symbols. As we're looking at the chest here, you can see that you have all the symbols at the bottom, the answer is what you need, and the question, chant the name of a clan that has been subverted by the demons. This one's obvious, it's the Oni. They've even told us earlier, but we can't answer it until we know what the symbols mean. We've got to put them in the correct order, otherwise it will not open. Now, these chests don't contain anything necessary, but it's really helpful because they do give you some useful items. So it's always nice to pick up the notebooks and try your best to decipher them and figure out the answer. As we progress through the game, we get varied amounts of enemies, all with their own little movesets and their own weaknesses and strengths. And I really like this. There's not an overwhelming amount of them. It's enough that you need to learn. And this game's combat system feels a little bit more like you can be sort of aggressive. It's not always that way though. My favorite types of combat systems are be as aggressive as you want. As long as you pay attention, you can then figure out how to be that aggressive. This game does have some moments where it's wait and see, and that's fine. I think that's one of the only things I don't like about the combat is I wish it went more my pace, and that's fine. I accept that it goes the pace it does because it's still extremely fun. But during some sections of the game, I find I'm like, I really wish I could just push forward and do stuff, but I can't. I've got to wait because I can't do anything else until I figure it out, which is, again, fine. Don't get me wrong. It's more of a personal preference to have battle systems that are a little faster. But in the end, this battle system is really, really solid and a lot of fun, and I did not expect it to be. Here is the demon from earlier that we couldn't kill, and now we can. So he is kind of this mini-boss, and when you're fighting some of the mini-bosses or bosses, after you hit them several times, they will drop some red and yellow orbs for you to pick up, to draw in as you're fighting him. That way you don't just die, you have some chances to heal your health, which is nice. Here's this gross-ass dude who's doing stuff with demons, I think. I don't know, man. He looks nasty. He's got some nasty stuff hanging around him. And we gotta kick his ass later. He does introduce us to this enemy that has these long, stretchy arms that'll come out and smack you in the face, which is, you know, that's a cool one. This guy is really like, you gotta get in quick and start smacking him, otherwise he will get you. I do like that you can hit enemies on the ground and like finish them off. So knocking an enemy on the ground becomes a priority because if you can go over and finish them off, it takes an enemy off the battlefield and is helpful when you're fighting multiple enemies. This game isn't all combat though. There are some puzzles, and those puzzles are interesting. They are a little difficult at times, and other times they aren't. Now, the difficult ones are actually during a timed section I will show shortly, but some of them are just normal puzzles that you do at your own pace, you can back out of and go back into and take your time, but the timed one, that one's a little difficult. The interesting thing about all of the different elemental swords is that they all have a few different properties. There is the kind of, you know, in-between sword that does a decent amount of damage and decent amount of speed. There's the very fast sword that does less damage and has more speed. And then there's the sword that does a lot of damage and is a little bit slower. It's all kind of what preference you like that you use the swords. Now, the best thing though is to still pick a sword and level it up so that you are keeping up in damage, and then work on the other swords. However, there are times when you need a sword to be leveled up to open a door, so don't forget that you do need to come back and do a little bit of grinding. And this is what I did once or twice to level up my swords to an appropriate level so I could keep up. Obviously, I'm not spending a lot of time on this game because I'm trying to beat it, so when I come back to grind, I find a nice efficient area to do that, and it's not hard, it's not even that boring. The fights are still fun, and it didn't take very long to do. Again, this game took like 6.5 hours, so it's not like the grinding was a big part of the game. Okay, the first set of puzzles we get to with our friend Cade here needs both of us to do a couple lever pulls. Now, this section's fine, it's kind of boring. There's these gates that are closed and there are levers, and you switch between the characters, pulling a lever, holding open the door and having the character go across the door to the other levers. And as you do this, you can open up a treasure chest, but there are only so many things you can possibly do. So once you understand which lever does what, this section is easy, and there's no timing for this one. You just need to get through it to get to the next puzzle. This next puzzle is one that I actually like. This one has the floor either dropping out from underneath you or imprisoning you and having the other character need to save you. Each of these squares you step on that has an X or a plus will make the floors drop in that direction. So obviously if you have it drop underneath your friend, it will kill them and the puzzle's over. You must restart from a save. So watch to where the different floors are going to fall. So this X spot will make them fall in that diagonal direction, and the plus will make them fall in the cardinal directions. So just be careful, and once you figure it out, you can get your characters across to the circle and they get through the puzzle pretty easily. This is the puzzle that I'm not good at these ones, I'm sure there are other people who are, but you slide these little blocks with symbols on them across the puzzle area, and on the left you can see a timer slowly moving up. That is Samanosuke being drowned. He is drowning, and if you don't solve the puzzle quick enough, he drowns. This is after the other two puzzles, which means that you must complete the two puzzles and then come in here and do this in a certain amount of time. Now, I didn't quite understand the first time where you needed to put the different puzzle pieces, but once I did, you need to take the two yellow puzzle pieces that make a flower when they're together and put them in the bottom middle portion. Once you get them there, the puzzle is over. But again, it just wasn't very clear. I didn't understand exactly what I needed to do. I wasn't paying attention to the fact that the flower was down there. But once I figured it out, it was done. But timing this one sucked. It sucked because I felt I was being rushed, and I don't like these puzzles that much. So I get it here in the middle and it's just not right. I needed to move it all down one spot. And then it became clear after that. Here is another trick treasure box, and this one I really like. At the very top you see rest and a number, and that means that's the number of moves you have left. You must match the numbers on the screen here to the numbers in the corners of each of the sections. The middle two numbers, and this one specifically, doesn't matter. It's just the corners. You must match the 1, 3, 4, and 6 together to open the treasure chest in a certain number of moves. And it's practically that exact number of moves you need. And once you do it, you get what's inside. In this room here, you see this creepy dude who's just silently staring at you, and he says nothing. He becomes important kind of later, but he's just creepy sitting in this room here watching me. An orb for each of the elemental swords. See, this is the whole point. You need to gather all of the elements to get through some of the doors and level up your swords. It's very important, not just for damage, but for story purposes. Here's another one of the bosses. He has a shield and a sword and is pretty aggressive with them. You need to be careful. You need to try and get him to drop his shield long enough for you to attack. Obviously, using magic from your sword is helpful. You can dodge his sword instead of guarding, come in and smack him while he's still in the middle of one of his swings. It all depends on what you want to do. So the whole reason that we're here trying to figure out what's going on is that people have been disappearing from my cousin's castle, Princess Yuki, and then this little boy here. Now, we didn't understand exactly what was going on, but it's pretty simple. The demons need to sacrifice both Yuki, my cousin, and this kid so that Nobunaga can have more power, because the demons are recruiting him, like I said, to do demon stuff. And to make him more powerful, they need to sacrifice these two. Obviously, Samanosuke does not want that to happen, so we're trying to save them and defeat the demons at the same time. That's pretty much it. And they do trick us a couple times. There's also this guy who's trying to talk up the demons, and he wants to work with the demons. He's this funny little ninja dude, and he doesn't help because he's like hurting us, and then he does this crap to us. Okay, so that's not me, that's someone else, and he has made a doppelganger of us to trick, and this is what I'm talking about. We got tricked. He makes this doppelganger, and we beat the crap out of our friend, and then she's like, no, that's not really you. There's no way it's you. You would never do something like this. Yeah, you're right, this is a doppelganger. Here's a section where we must use Cade to go help Samanosuke. This is after she's been hit by his doppelganger, and we need to find out where he is because obviously we've lost Princess Yuki and the kid. Once he knocked us out, they took both of them and they're gone. While you're playing as her, you cannot suck in any of the souls from those guys. You don't get anything you keep except for items you pick up off the ground, which is really cool. But this section is mostly just run past enemies. There is a special thing you can do with her that is like a one-hit kill on some of the earlier or easier enemies by jumping over them and like slitting their throat, I guess. It was fun to do, but it's not necessary. You can just run past people because she is not actually one of the demon slayers because she doesn't have any of the Oni powers. So while she can kill some of them, it's not necessarily, necessary like at all to kill them. So if you can run past them, that's the best idea. Oh no, we found her down inside of this prison cell and we still haven't found Samanosuke, so hopefully we don't have to deal, oh, that creepy dude. He's gonna do some crap to her. Okay, now that she's found us, we have to separate again, but at least this time she knows that it wasn't us who beat the crap out of her earlier. She knows now. So yeah, we gotta figure out a way through this door. We just gotta figure out a way through about 1 million doors. This area right here is actually where I spend some time grinding to get both health and leveling up my swords and anything else I need. I just like to learn some of the combat features and get health and get red orbs. I do this quite a few times. If you come in through this door I'm looking at right here and then have the enemies spawn in, you get very specific enemies that give you a decent amount of currency. It only takes me about half an hour to grind out what I need, and I'm practically full. I don't need to get any more souls. As you can see, some of my swords are level 1 still, and after I do the grinding here, they're all level 3. Okay, you remember that creepy little guy who was hanging from the ceiling who was looking at me silently? Well, he takes us down to this very special place that has a bunch of different floors. And after you complete each floor, you go down further to do another floor. It's kind of like a big challenge. Enemies will spawn in, and depending on how far down you are, you'll get more challenging enemies, and there'll be more of them. You need to figure out how to get through each of the floors because there is no stopping. If you die, and that's it. You gotta reload, which most likely will be in the room where you first started this. You can leave in the middle of this. You won't be able to return to that floor though. You'll have to start all over, but you can leave and keep what you've gotten. So you don't need to keep going all the way down if you find what you need or what you want and realize you don't need to go further. And this is a very challenging part of the game. I actually did not get to the bottom floor. I tried 2 or 3 times, and in the end I realized, well, I don't need to. I'm getting close to the end of the game already. I might as well continue going. At the end of this, you do get a super special sword, which is very strong and makes the rest of the game a breeze. Which is cool. I like that. There's also some cool items, like an item that will resurrect you upon death, which is helpful because this game is challenging. I spend my time backtracking, opening doors I hadn't opened yet with my new leveled up swords, and then eventually finding Cade once again, where we need to progress the story because, well, they still have Princess Yuki. We've got to find her somewhere. We take over as her again as Samanosuke gets trapped by a bunch of these scorpion spider looking things. She must come in from the side at the same time and find a way to help us. Now she doesn't know this. All she knows is that there's something going on in the tower and she's got to get there on her own terms. So we travel around the castle again, trying to find one more door to go through. Then we fight this big old bug, this woman who has turned into a bug, and she isn't terribly hard as long as you pay attention to what you're doing and have picked up the gun. The gun will make much quicker work of her. You can stand from far away and hit her without having her have her come down and guard and then hit her with your sword. And obviously, this is the preferred way to fight her. Getting this gun isn't too difficult of a task. I think I found it just during play. I mean, no one told me necessarily about it other than that it would be helpful, and I found it myself. So I think anyone else can find it pretty easily. And she's defeated quickly once you take care of her little bugs, which I believe at level 3 swords, you should be able to take care of these guys pretty quick. Oh no, is she dying? I hope she doesn't die. I actually thought in the game that she was going to die, so my prediction, will it come true? So during my playthrough, it was a little difficult to tell where I needed to go and what I needed to do. The map has several different icons for the doors that you've gone through and have unlocked and haven't been in and stuff like that. So it's really helpful to try and remember as best as you can. But because the color coding, you can figure it out, and that's what I did. I went over and over and over through the map trying to find out where I needed to go to get that next item. And that essentially what this game is. If you aren't fighting, you are searching for an item to unlock a door and then finding where that door is if you haven't already found it. And if you have, there are a lot of screens. And yes, they are all unique, so it should be easier to remember. But it isn't always easy to remember. It just isn't. There's a lot of rooms, a lot of areas, and you can backtrack practically to the beginning of the game. You have all of it available to you at most times. So you'll find yourself getting a little confused and turned around. And it's not terrible. Again, this game was only 6.5 hours, so it wasn't so bad. It only took me about an hour at the end of the game here to figure out how to get there, which is crazy. This game was so short. I just thought it would be a little bit longer, but yeah, you get here very quickly. A lot of my time, like an hour and a half to 2 hours, was spent in that dungeon that you go down to get the sword. It was a lot of fun and I enjoyed it, so it was cool to do, but I can't believe how much of that was actually part of the game I played. If I had skipped it all together, then I would have beaten this game in like 4 hours. As we make our way further down, we fight this two-sworded boss who is difficult and wants to just charge into you, man. I died a couple times because I'm just a little too antsy. Like I said, I like battles to go my own way, and so waiting for him to do stuff just took too long, and then I'd get myself into trouble because he'd hit me after I made a mistake. Okay, well there's this creepy-ass demon who's going around. They've got Princess Yuki and the kid here, and he comes to fight us. Everyone else actually is able to get away at this point. We save them just in time, and we have to fight the last boss alone, which, you know, is preferable since if they sacrifice those two, then this guy right here, Nobunaga, gets super powerful, and we don't want him to do that. Now, apparently he doesn't know how to walk downstairs any quicker than this, so we have all the time in the world to kill this guy before he gets down the stairs? I'm not sure. He's just like meandering at this point. He's got eternal power granted to him just down the stairs, but can't quite get there. The final boss isn't terribly difficult. He is difficult, and I use some herbs and some medicine to heal myself, as well as get some magic power back so that I can beat this boss just super quick. And in the end, I'm able to beat him in like the first go. So it's mostly just like guard and watch where he's gonna use his fire attack and just beat him quick. Like, just go quick, fast as you can. You can guard some of his attacks or get away from them by running to the back of the screen, and again, he does drop different orbs that will regenerate some of your stuff. So I don't think it's too bad. I think some of the other bosses were harder. This one does take a while, like longer than the average boss, because he's standing still. So obviously they give him more health so that you have something to do. I mean, I just stood in the corner here and whooped his ass. Everyone else escapes, and we are grabbed by the boss. And now, at the end here, my blood apparently drops onto the sword or the gauntlet, and it makes us turn into the Onimusha, which, you know, the Oni gave us their power, so of course that would make sense. I'm some super powerful thing, and I use it to actually finish killing the last boss. And we have a stare down with Nobunaga himself, and actually the game kind of ends there. We are understanding that Samanosuke did actually survive because at the very, very end, after the cutscene and the credits, we get to see him like standing and staring and then walking off. It does tell us that Princess Yuki and the kid are fine. Our friend Cade actually dies in battle 14 years later searching for us, although it was changed, I think, later on to mean that she actually lived and was searching for us and found us. So apparently we are still alive. Each of the Onimusha games have a separate main character, so this Samanosuke is not the main character again, I guess, which makes sense. It was a little hard to tell, and I think this game didn't make it very clear that anyone found me or what really happened, which is fine. I think I'll find out in the second and third games what happened, which is cool. I'm excited for him because this game was very good. And this boss is down. We beat it. That's right. Game number 96 complete. I really liked this game. The only thing keeping it from an S score for me was the fact that I felt battle was a little weird with the fixed camera angles and the slightly slower nature of it, because it's almost somewhere in between Devil May Cry and Resident Evil. Like I said, you can move faster than Resident Evil in combat, which is good, but like I said, personal preference, I really wish that it was a little faster or I dictated more of the battle myself. Now, maybe that's just me not being good enough to understand and playing it so quickly, and maybe people can say in the comments, oh, you could have done this, I don't know what you're doing. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. But I still give it a very high A score, like a 9.8. It's just below perfect. Maybe the difficulty should have been up for me. Maybe the length of the game would have helped as well. I think that's what would have done it for me. A little bit longer of a game, a little bit more difficult in some areas, and then combat that felt a little bit more quick. But that's very small for me. It's so small that I still give it a 9.8. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching this video. I appreciate it. Thank you, anyone who is a member and has a membership to the channel through YouTube, Patreon, Twitch, and anyone who's donated. I always forget to say that. Anyone who's donated also gets to choose games. If you donate $1, you get to choose a game. So people have done that as well. So thank you to all the memberships and all the donations. There's so many games to play. It's going to be great. And I am so happy to say that we're almost to 100 games, so stay tuned because those games are coming out. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. I'll be back for video number 97 soon. Later.